Boker Tov, Shalom Aleichem, everyone. Welcome to the Aliyah day. It is the first day post-Hanukkah. Hanukkah is over, and that's a little bit sad. It was kind of sad not to light the Hanukkah last night. But we move on now to other holidays. We have the minor acknowledgement of Tu B'Shavat coming up. And then, of course, the holiday of Purim, which we're looking forward to. And then a month later, Pesach, and then the rest of the season is going to be amazing. So it's a little sad. And I was talking to Charlie, so I was running a little bit late this morning. Charlie was, talking my ear off. He's a little sad about not having his peeps with him anymore, and the Hanukkah, he's got to put it up and wait till next year. And B, he's not always in the screenshot. Usually he's off to my right here, working all the buttons, but he's no longer going to be in the screenshot. This will be his last time to be up there. So that's kind of sad. I know, Charlie, right? Now, one of the most burning questions that you guys have and have had is why does the rabbi love penguins so much? I know it's one of the if I had to write down the top 5 questions I receive on a daily basis, that's one of them. Why do I love penguins so much? Well, I'm going to answer that for you. I'm going to answer the root of my penguin affection. Well, first of all, everybody knows that penguins are Jewish because they wear black and white all the time. It's clearly they're Jewish. And they're also not kosher birds, so that means you can't be eaten, which is always something a Jew would do. And a Jew would always put himself or herself in a place in which she cannot be eaten. So that's one thing. But aside from that, and aside from their fact that they're really cool and cute and they swim really fast, my affinity for penguins. They're also French. Thank you, Shmuel. They're inherently French. They speak French as their native tongue. But aside from all of that, my affection for penguins, interestingly, actually, truthfully, goes back to my childhood, in which when I was a kid, I loved Batman and Robin. Right? Who didn't as a boy? Or maybe you didn't. I don't know. But my favorite superhero growing up was Batman and Robin, right? And my favorite supervillain was the Penguin. I love the Penguin, especially from the old 60s show, Pow, Bang, Zoom, the Batman and Robin from the 60s. And Burgess Meredith played the Penguin. I still watch those episodes today. Represing thinks they're a little bit corny, but I still, sometimes every now and then I'll turn on some Batman and Robin from the 60s and watch Burgess Meredith with his little, umbrella and his what do you call it? Cigarette on a little cigarette exchange. By the way, a little funny behind the scenes with Burgess Meredith. Burgess Meredith did not smoke, apparently. And in the show, the Penguin, has the long cigarette on the cigarette extender. And so the cigarette smoke would make him cough. And so whenever he coughed, in order to kind of cover up the cough, he would kind of cough and he would do the It's a true story. And apparently he did that just kind of like, I'm trying to cover up the fact that I'm coughing as I'm trying to do this scene. But everybody loved it. They loved the fact that the Penguin, the supervillain, would walk around going, and it became his signature thing to do. So there you go. I know. See, some of you have been waiting years for me to explain this whole thing. So there you go. You're welcome. And now you know. And knowing, as they say in G.I. Joe, is half the battle. Shmuel, I'll send you a link to the show. Sure, yeah. I think Zake and Rayford actually has all of them. He could probably send you, I don't know if you can send you Zake and Rayford, can you send Shmuel an episode of the original Batman from TV that has one of the Burgess Meredith Penguin episodes? Really, I like it. Anyway, enough about that. What are we talking about now? Oh, we're now united in Goshen. We are at the end of the parasha here of Vayigash. Yosef and his brothers and now his father are going to be reunited in the land of Goshen. And the land of Goshen, as we talked about, was a land that was given to Sarah. We're going to mention this again today, but the gematria of Goshen is Moshiach. And so it paints an interesting picture for us that here in the land of exile, we're called here to reach the lost, as it were. We're going to circle back and touch on that again, because I think it's important for us always to have our mission in mind. And we're trying to reach people. In any case, it reminds us that even in the land of exile, we can be in Moshiach. We can be in the Messiah. And listen, we have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of deception out there, a lot of false religion. You know, I want to share something with you just real quickly, because right before the program began, was involved in, Seth and I actually, involved in talking to somebody online who is real Paulian, you know, Christian, you know, they're struggling with the Paul thing. And I had encouraged this person to let Paul go. And I sent them a link to the teaching on that and so forth. And of course, you know, one of the challenges, people want you to list everything you believe in all of your verses and have this big, long texting debate on a thread. And I never do that. That's why I produce content for a reason, right? I'm not going to get online with somebody and just go through all the verses. I don't have time for that, number one. And I have absolutely zero interest in doing that. So if you're going to get online and say, hey, what do you think about this? I'm going to send you a video. And a lot of people, I can't tell you how many times this happens. People say, I don't want to watch the video. I don't have time to watch the video. I want you to tell me here on this chat why you believe this. And my thing is that you don't have time to watch my video. And yet you want me to spend God knows how long going through this on a thread. That's not going to happen. You should stop drinking soy milk and return to regular milk and man up and just watch the video. Okay. This is what happens when men drink soy. They, you know, that's what happens. And so don't do that. But anyway, I told this person, let Paul go. And of course, they're trying to be cute. They're trying to be like pro Paul. And they told me, no, you need to let Moses go. And Seth and I try to explain to this person that, what you just said is like so blasphemous. What you're telling me to do, I'm telling you to let a man go, and you're telling me to let God go. Moses is not God, of course, but Moses represents the word of God, which is in fact God. So you see, we have a lot of work to do. One of the things we need to do is getting men to stop drinking soy milk and eating soy, because this is what happens when that happens. But putting that aside, you see, we have a lot of work to do. Getting people to kind of see reality for what it is, right? Sad, isn't it? But it's crazy. Let Moses go? Yeah, I don't think so. Anyway, let's say good morning to everybody. Tara, I came into the soy milk part. Yeah. Good morning, David. Glad you're here. Good morning, Sergio. Glad you were here. Hope you and Johnny are doing well. And Chris and Crystal, Boker Tov to you. Johan, good morning. Ariella, Rafaela, good morning to you. Lori, good morning. There's Seth. Good morning, Seth. And good morning, Karen Homan. Karen, are you happen to be related to Tom Homan by chance? I hope so. That'd be fantastic. Good morning, Anthony. Good morning, Sarah, Johanna. Good morning. Anthony, Boker Tov. Milka, good morning. Hope you and Zara and Daniel are doing great. Kim Bement, Boker Tov to you. Sarah Merritt, hope you and Shane are doing great. Zakin Yagal, Boker Tov. Shmuel, Boker Tov. Oh, by the way, people have been saying they've been getting friend requests from me on Facebook. Somebody using my name. In case you didn't hear me, I put this out on the chat. I haven't sent any friend requests out to anybody on Facebook, actually. I don't typically do that. It's rare. It's like Sasquatch rare that I would do that. So yeah, I haven't sent any. So if you get a friend request from me, it's there's a 99.999% chance it's not me. Good morning, Katura. By the way, did y'all see that two guys went out to find Sasquatch and they weren't properly dressed, I guess. They got lost. They died. They froze. I mean, hypothermia. That's sad. Yeah. Anyway, good morning, Glenn. Good morning, Shoshana. See, with Lapid Judaism, you also get the news. Yeah, you're welcome. We're going to have a weather up. Charlie, you want to do the weather? What Charlie's going to do the weather later. Good morning. But by the way, it's going to be cold, which he digs. Good morning, Baraka. Good morning, Wendeley. Good morning to did I say good morning, Brenda and Ahavat? Good morning, Nellie Grace. Cecile White, watching from beautiful Monahans. Good morning, Cecile. Hope you're doing great. You and the fam. Good morning, Lantern Lights. And Amita, good morning to you. And Micaiah and Samuel Dykes. Michael, Leah, Levi, good morning. Melinda, Boker Tov, John, Boker Tov. And good morning again, Shmuel. Did I miss anybody? Je suis su matin, battu chez toi, chez toi, là-tu, matin. Oh, Luis, Penguin's Aussie mate. Yeah, she's here. And Charlie digs her accent, by the way. Who else do we have here? There's Zach and Rayford. Order 60, good morning to you. Anthony Westcott, good morning. I'm going to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Hope I didn't. Joseph, good morning. And I think Joe Plunkett, good morning to you. Good morning again, Atar. Hope you and Morgan are doing fantastic. And good morning, Karen. Karen Holman. Okay. I just wonder if you might be related to Tom Holman. That'd be great. Tom seems like a great guy. All right, Boker. Good morning, Ellie. Hope you and Joseph are doing great and the fam. And good morning, Ami, who's watching on Facebook. And Bear's Beer to Pray. Good morning to you. Glad everybody is here. All right, so let me share this one insight right quick because I mentioned it yesterday. Then I got busy waxing eloquently and forgot about it. But I want to come back to it because there was a story here about when the brothers come to tell their father Jacob. Good morning, Hulda. And they're wanting to kind of break the news gently to Jacob that his son Joseph is alive. They want to kind of overwhelm him. And so it says here in Mam Loez, the Torah uses the expressions, they went up from Egypt because Egypt is a low country while Canaan is a highlands. Okay. Good morning, Donna. Good morning to you. And it says here, just before they arrived at home, the brothers began to consider what to do now. If they suddenly came and told their father that Joseph was still alive, he might die of shock. Jacob had been mourning Joseph for so many years. Now they would have to break the good news that he was still alive, occupying not only that, but occupying a high position in Egypt. And so while they were discussing the problem, Asher's daughter Sarah came by. The brothers knew that she was an extremely intelligent girl. After greeting her, the brothers said, "We have an important favor to ask of you. Take your harp and sing a song to our father." So in the middle of the song, she mixed in the words, "Joseph is alive. He is ruler of the land of Egypt." Do not pronounce the words clearly. Let them be swallowed up by the song. So it will be that father will not realize that you are saying until it is sung many times. Let every refrain end with these words. So it goes on to say, Sarah took up her harp and went to Jacob singing a very beautiful and haunting melody. She sung that Joseph was alive and a ruler in Egypt. And although she did not sing the words clearly, Jacob heard them and began to pay attention. Each time he caught the words more and more clearly, and soon he began to understand that she was trying to tell him that Joseph was alive in Egypt. And then at this point, the brothers appeared. They had sent word to their servants that they had arrived, and now Jacob saw them returning and dressed magnificently. The brothers were dressed magnificently. And the brothers had sent Naphtali ahead with the news, since he was a very fast runner, etc., which is probably, by the way, where the flash came from. I'm not kidding. That's probably most likely where the idea of the flash came from Naphtali, but I don't know that for sure. I'm just speculating. Now, the reason I bring up this story about this girl Sarah is because there's a tradition that because of what she did here in blessing Jacob in this way and being so kind and singing this song and so forth and so on, there's a tradition that Jacob blessed her with exceptionally long life. And then there's a story. It's found in the Talmud, I believe. I can't recall the exact reference right off the top of my head, but the story is there, and it's really fascinating, actually. And the story is that some sages are sitting around and they're talking about the parting of the Red Sea and what it was like. Now, they themselves were not there, but their fathers were there, right? And so they're talking about the different concepts of the way that the crossing of the Red Sea, when the waters parted, they're talking about what that was actually like. Now, by the way, it's not uncommon for non-Jews to come on and say and debate different things, which is really interesting, but they like to dismiss the idea, the words of the sages, but what they don't realize is that what these stories, and it was what I'm talking about particularly, like, well, when this happened, this is what was going on behind the scenes, and non-Jews like to come on and say, how do we know that? Well, these people, their parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, they were there. I've said this, I've used this analogy 1,000 times, and let me employ it one more time here. My grandfather fought at the Battle of the Bulge and the Battle of the Rhine in Patton's Third Army in an armor unit. So he as a boy, he told my brother and I a few stories, that I don't expect are written down in any history book, okay? Because they're just not. But does that mean because they're not written down in a history book, does that mean it didn't happen? Of course not. There's thousands of stories from World War II and frankly from every war that aren't recorded in any history book, and yet they happened and we know about them because we're related to the people who were there. Okay. So that's how these stories get written down, right? If I wrote down a story that my grandfather told me about the Battle of the Bulge, it's a valid story. He was there. He told me, I'm telling you. Okay. So that's how this stuff happens. I don't understand. I really struggle to realize why this is complicated. So people say, well, how do you know that really happened? Because I've heard it from somebody whose father was there. Okay. Anyway, but they're sitting around talking about parting the Red Sea. And the story goes that Sirach, this woman, walks in because she's still alive, because she was blessed with exceptionally long life. And she sat down with the sages and actually told them what it was like because she was actually there. Isn't that incredible? It's an incredible story. So, good morning, Frederick from Sweden. Glad you're here. From all the way from Sweden. Good morning, Kathy. Glad you're here as well. He is the Lord of hosts, whoever that is. Blessings to you, Baruch HaShem. Awesome. All right. So, want to read the rest of this paragraph. I read about yesterday about going to Goshen, going to Egypt, descending to Egypt, and collecting the holy sparks there. We waxed eloquently yesterday about our, mission. I want to read this last part of this insight because it deals with, once again, going to Egypt, collecting the holy sparks and so forth and so on. It says, accordingly, in early history, the land of Egypt offered the greatest possibility for the people of God to raise themselves to the level of holiness. So it's talking here about descending to a place of debauchery, the idea that where there is the most impurity lies the potential for the most holiness. Now we see this in the scripture because let's remind ourselves, where are the two places, or I should say the single place? Well, there's more than one, but let's stick with this one. Where is the place from which the Messiah was found? Okay, so the sages bring this down. In other words, where did God, quote unquote, find the spark of Moshiach? And the answer, of course, is, does anybody know before I give you the answer? Does anybody, who can tell me? Now it's euphemistic, right? We don't mean this literally, but where did God find the spark of Messiah? All right. Shoshana Brenner said Sodom and Gomorrah, and Sergio said Moab, which are both true. Okay. The spark of Messiah was found in Sodom and Gomorrah. And of course, Sergio is right, Moab, because we know the story of the incest between Lot and his daughters gave birth to Moab, and Ruth was the princess of Moab, who became the mother, as it were, of King David, indeed the mother of Moshiach. Okay. So the point is that if you can find Messiah in Sodom, then what other holy sparks are there? Okay. So on the one hand, we complain, and rightfully so, about the depravity of the world in which we live, and yet in that depravity is where we find the holy sparks. Okay. And you're right as well, Sergio. We could also bring up Judah and Tamar. For that matter, we could bring up Rahab, known famously as Rahab the harlot. But see, Rahab wasn't just a harlot. She actually ran a business. She had other employees. Let's put it that way, right? So it says here, it was there in Egypt that the spirit of impurity from debauchery, perversion, and immorality had occupied all of the 49 gates of impurity. And hence it was there in the iron furnace of discipline, self-denial, and austerity to Jewry, inspired by faith in God and his moral laws, and purified by the moral and physical suffering of slavery, could progressively conquer the 49 gates of holiness. So this is saying that, look, we talked about this point earlier, and this comes into play as we discuss Enoch as well, which tomorrow, Bezrat Hashem, we're going to have kind of Enoch part 2. We'll get to revisit some of the things we discussed about Enoch, and also share some of the insights that I didn't get a chance to really share because of time. But one of the ideas of Enoch's approach to life, good morning, Clayton. One of the ideas of Enoch's approach to life was to be a hermit, to be a monk, to sequester himself in order to not have to face, the world out there. The other extreme, the other idea was that Enoch enjoyed everything. In other words, he had no boundaries, he had no fence laws, but yet he still walked the path of Torah, but he didn't shield himself or what have you, create any fences or any barriers. He just let himself be tested. Like I'm going to throw myself into the fire, and so forth. And at the same time, maintain a level of holiness. And so the sages condemn both approaches. There has to be a balance. And sometimes with Judaism, you see there are sects of Jews who become so ascetic, so monkish, to use that word. They try to, they eat the proverbial bread and water, and that's all they have. And they seclude themselves into a yeshiva. And it doesn't always have positive results. The Yetzer Hara can even get you in the yeshiva. Can I just share something with you really quickly? Rebbe and I have talked about this. Yes, tomorrow is Shabbat. Did I say something different? Tomorrow is Shabbat, yes. Tomorrow I'll be talking about Enoch, yes, and the Drash. Rebbe and I have talked about this, that there is this now. Here's the point, okay? You have to have balance in your life. Don't be a monk. We're not called to be monks. at the same time, don't be out in the world with no barriers, with no fences. Okay. But the Yetzer Hara can get you anywhere. The Yetzer Hara can even get you in the monk world, if you will. Because here's the reality. Look, the point is, wherever you are, I was going to say something about, I'm going to refrain. Wherever you are, you can be tempted. All right, even in the cave. Can we let's just leave it there. Okay. That's probably the most prudent thing to do. So you have to have balance. Now, going back to this idea, the true test of holiness, ladies and gentlemen, is to be in the world but not of the world, which I emphasize yet again is a Jewish concept. That's how you know if you're really good. Okay, if you really believe what you believe, to be in the world but not of the world, to be in the world and be tempted and say no, to be pressed and say no. That's how you know. And of course, in my mind right now are 1,000 different military examples, because that's the world in which I live and have lived. And so we could bring all those down, but the point is you've got to go through the crucible of life. That's what we're called to do. And so coming here and sequestering yourself is not what you're supposed to do. And so what's point that's brought down here is that us going to Goshen, us going to Egypt was all part of the necessary refinement that we needed to come to where we are. This is why converts are greater than born Jews. And that's not my opinion. That's the opinion of Jewish sages. They're greater. They're stronger. They're more spiritual. They're on a higher level. Why? Because if you're born into an Orthodox Jewish home, you've never known what it's like to eat bacon. You've lived in and it's not just bacon, but I use that as a euphemism for everything. You grew up with these ideas, with these concepts. You grew up with the mitzvot. You grew up with this knowledge. If you are not Jewish, then you were born into a mess, and you were born into a pantheon of religious ideas. And some of you are having to shed Paul. Think about just how hard that is. There's this, we know people who don't even know who Paul is. Think about that. Think about just that one thing that you're having to go through the crucible of sorting through false ideas. And yet there are people out there who don't even, if I said, what about Paul? They're like, Paul, who's Paul? Think about that. You had to change your whole menu. Some of you have made this decision, and it's caused a strain in your family relationships, not because you wanted it, but because they chose it. Your family members chose it. You didn't cut relation off with them. They cut relation off with you because you decided to become a Jew. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? If you're born into a Jewish family, that's not an issue. Some of you have it's caused a split in your marriage. You don't have a marriage anymore because of that. Not because that's what you wanted, but that's what the other spouse chose. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? If you're Jewish, that's not an issue. If you're born Jewish. So you've been through the crucible is what I'm trying to say. And that's why you're stronger. That's why you're tougher. That's why the Bible, by the way, there's scores of verses to protect you, the proselyte, and to treat you on the same level as a widow and an orphan for this very reason. It's a level of concern. It's a level of care. It's a level of love. It's a level of respect that the born Jew doesn't get. And this is why, by the way, in Judaism, there's so much jealousy of converts. And it's why there's so many Jewish groups don't want to do the convert thing. One of the reasons is because of this very thing I'm talking about. This idea of, hey, man, I was born into this, and I'm special. And then all of a sudden, Johnny Gentile shows up, goes through the conversion, and he's higher than you. You can see where that would be a problem, right? But there's a reason. Because you haven't been through the crucible, Jack. You haven't been through there. You don't know what it's like. You've lived in a bubble. But Johnny Gentile, who became a Jew last week, hasn't lived in that bubble. They had to claw their way to the top and figure things out. And you've been spoon-fed this your whole life. I'm not trying to disparage Jewish people who are born Jewish. People that, like myself, who have Jewish, heritage. I'm not trying to disparage that. I'm just saying that there is a reality check here. How many of you know what I'm talking about? How many of you know? How many of you get it? Okay. It's very good. Hulda is talking about the Messianic world. Some of you are still in the Messianic world because, it's a process. You're still there and you're kind of like, I get it. It's a process. But to Hulda's point here, I think is what she's trying to say. I hope I'm not misreading what you're writing here, Hulda, but I will tell you that if you're in the Messianic world, you're still, in other words, you're still going to a Messianic church. And, they meet on Saturday and the guy or gal who's leading it wears a kippah, read from the Torah scroll and all that kind of stuff. I will tell you this, write this down and put it away somewhere. And when it happens, you can go back and go, he was right. He's like a prophet. The more observant, like really observant, like you're not kidding. I'm really observant. I'm not playing around observance. The more observant you become, the less you will be welcome there. Write that down. The more truly observant you become, like you're in it to win it. You're not kidding. I'm really Jewish. I'm eating kosher now. Like I won't eat non-kosher meat and I won't mix meat and dairy together, etc., etc. If you're a gentleman, I'm going to wrap tefillin. I'm going to wear tzitzit. I'm going to, etc. I'm going to wear a talit gadol, not the little bitty cute scarf like I'm soy milk person, but I'm going to actually wear the big one like men do, like adult males do in Judaism. When you start doing that, you're going to start getting the cold shoulder. Write that down. It's going to happen. There's a reason for it, by the way, but that's an aside. Okay. It'll happen. I guarantee you. There's a reason. The reason for it's going to happen. You know what? Do you want to hear the reason? Shall I tell you the reason? Some of you already know the reason. Sergio, do you know the reason? Levi, do you know the reason why I'm about to say? I'm asking. Does anybody happen to know? Anybody want to know the reason? Bearded praise experience. Nobody's. Yeah, Sergio, that's the reason. So here's the reason. Anti-Semitism. Yeah, you're right. Actually, it is anti-Semitism. Actually, and it is jealousy. Rebbesin's right too. I'm going to rephrase. All of you are correct. I'm just going to repackage it a little bit. The reason is, and you know what? Let me preface what I'm about to say by saying that the leaders of these places may not even realize this. Okay, they may not even realize it. So I'm not going to paint them to be bad people or evil people or nefarious. They're not. Most of them are probably really good people, actually. And, if I was going to go out and I don't know, if I was to sit down and play dominoes, they're probably good guys or what have you. But the reality is I'm talking here broadly on a macro level of the Messianic movement. Okay. The purpose of the Messianic movement, ladies and gents, is to make Jews Christians. And because they are addicted to Paul, like all Christians are, their ultimate purpose is to jettison the Torah. Now, they don't mind keeping some of the trappings because that makes it, relevant. Like, just like in the same way that at a Gentile church, they wear blue jeans so that the people out there will feel comfortable. In the same way at a Messianic church, they wear a kippah. Okay. So the point is that when you come in and you start living a Jewish life, like for real, you're not kidding. I'm not playing around. I want to go through conversion and do this for real. As we say in Lapid, faux real. Then you're the problem now because you're going in the wrong direction. The whole point is to get the Orthodox Jew to not be Orthodox anymore, and you're going in that direction. You see the problem? Write that down. That is the issue, right? Okay. So let's go back to our point here. So going through the crucible is part of it. We have to go through the crucible. That's why I said I talked about this on the last drosh. It's why that men are higher than angels, because angels haven't had to go through the crucible. Okay. It's the same reason I'm going to speak to you as a man. Okay. Because I'm not a woman. Obviously. As a man, I would never let a 17-year-old or 18-year-old or 20-year-old boy, no, not really a boy, they're a man too at that age, but I would never let them like teach me. Because I'm 50. I'll be 51 in February. You're 20, you're 22, you're 23. What do you have to teach me? I mean, I'm not being arrogant. I'm not saying that I know everything, but what I'm trying to say is I've been through the crucible of life. Okay. And I've got some more crucible to go through. So, I'm not saying you can't teach me anything. Like, you might know how to play a video game that I don't know how to play. You can teach me that. You might be good at karate or something. You can teach me karate, but I'm not going to sit down and take life advice to you. Does that make sense? Does that make me a bad person? And if you're a young man right now and you're hearing me, don't be offended. Don't be offended. Like you're 18 or 19 or 20, 22, something like that. And you're like, man, I feel, don't be offended. But the point I'm trying to make here is that when you're gone through the crucible, you have something to talk about, right? It's like a guy once said. He said, it's like saying you have a flood story. Like at one point in your life, you went through a flood, and then Noah walks in the room. All of a sudden, your flood story is like nothing. Okay, and you have to recognize that. So we have to go through life. We go through the crucible of life. Some people don't want to go through the crucible of life. That's why people live on the street. 99% of people that live on the street are there on purpose. I know there's homeless ministries and that's all well and good, but 99% of the time, and anybody who's honest about homeless ministry will tell you this, 99% of the people that live on the street are there on purpose. Are there people there who went through a bad time and need help? Sure. Yeah. They're about 1% of them. Most people are there because they don't want to go through the crucible of life. They don't want to have responsibility. They don't want to have car payments and house payments and responsibilities, like a job, that type of thing. But that's not what we're called to do. Okay. All right. So moving on. Some people don't like what I have to say on Lapid Judaism because they don't like truth and reality. And not just about scripture things, but just about life things. It bothers them. Sometimes we don't want to face with the realities of life. And as y'all all know, this is Realville, and I'm the mayor of Realville, and we like to live in reality. I always encourage everybody to live in reality. I think that if you live in reality, that you will be less likely to be a nutcase. That's my theory. And so far, my theory has worked out. If you live in reality, then you have a less likelihood of being a nutcase, right? I think so. So it says, as our verse states, for I shall establish you as a great nation there. So this is the interesting part of our story about you being united in Goshen. We had to go to Goshen because it's in Goshen that we're going to become a nation. Interesting, isn't it? So you would think that we're going to become it'd be better to become a nation in the Holy Land. If you had to ask me, Well, where should the holy nation of Israel be born? I would say, well, in the Holy Land, because there's Kedusha there. But isn't it interesting that that's not the case? God said it's in Egypt that you will be born as a nation. In other words, it's in the crucible of life. It's there that you become strong. It's there. It's there where you have to work hard, push through. So it says, as Moshe himself testified to this when he exclaimed about Jewry, Ki mi goy gadol, for which is a great nation, Deuteronomy 4:7. Such were the considerations concerning the provincial plan which God indicated to Jacob, who had hoped to go down to Egypt only for a short while, as he himself would tell Pharaoh. But that really wasn't the point. The point was, you're going to go down, and I'm going to go with you, and you're going to go there to rise up from there a great nation. Now, it says here in the text as well, in verse 28, he sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to prepare ahead of him in Goshen, and they arrived in the region of Goshen. Now, this is very interesting, because now that Joseph has been, as it were, resurrected, now that he's been revealed, now that it has been shown that he's alive, now that it's time to go to Goshen, Judah gets sent ahead. Remember how Yeshua said, I go to prepare a place for you? So now we get into the idea of what was Judah going to prepare? What was he going to do? Okay. Now, before I read this, I want to say this. There's just as a sidebar, there's an insight that says, good morning, Joshua, by the way, glad you're here. There's an insight that says that in the world to come, that the Messiah will be the teacher in the heavenly yeshiva. And then there's another insight that says that in the world to come, that HaShem will be the teacher in the heavenly yeshiva. And there's also another insight that says that in the world to come, Memtet is the teacher in the heavenly yeshiva. So my question to you is, which is it? Is the teacher of the heavenly yeshiva HaShem, the Messiah, or Memtet? And the answer is yes. Now, Yeshua said, I go to prepare a place for you. And here we have the picture of, interestingly enough, Judah going to prepare a place for us. So let's discuss here now, or let's find out rather, what is this place that he's going to prepare? So it says in the Insights of Rabbi Monk's commentary, as the Targum translates, in order to prepare a place for him, but then Rashi adds, and to show how to settle there. Now, undoubtedly, Jacob at first had no intention of establishing himself in Goshen permanently, as he had already been emphasized, which has been emphasized previously. Jacob did not expect to die in Egypt. It says, and yet the Torah tells us that at the end of the Sidra, remember Sidra is another name for Parasha. At the end of the Sidra, the family took possession of this Egyptian province over which they had inherited some rights from Sarah. So this, as we said, came from Sarah. It says, the Zohar remarks that they took possession of it in perpetuity. For the province belonged to them legally. This is very interesting, by the way, because what this means is that that area of Israel, of Egypt, rather, to this very day, actually belongs to Israel. But we continue. If one accepts the view quoted by Radak and from Joshua 11:16, that this province was incorporated into the territory of the ancestors, then we can also see why Jacob, although he felt so unhappy at being obliged to leave the Holy Land, had consented to settle there. This is what Rashi perhaps wants to bring to light when he adds his words to the Targum's translations. Now, Rashi also mentions the interpretation of the verb lehorot, the sense of to teach. In other words, he sent Judah to prepare a house of study for him, a place of learning. Every time he moved to a new land, Jacob's first concern was to strengthen himself morally, okay, by drawing inspiration from the sacred studies, just as we witnessed when he left for Haran. To the Jews of every era who find themselves immigrants in a new country, Jacob gives the example of fulfilling the most noble of their duties, which is to ensure for themselves and for their children the continuance of the sacred teachings. So Judah goes to Goshen to prepare a place, and that place is a place of Torah study. To go and prepare a shul, a synagogue. This is why it's so crucial for us to prepare in Goshen, in our Goshen. So it says Goshen. It says the word Goshen has the numerical value of 358, which is the exact same gematria of the word Moshiach. The Redeemer is called on to deliver Jewry from the yoke of the four nations which enslaved it, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Greek, and now the Romans. It says the Messiah, son of David, from the tribe of Judah, will be preceded by Moshiach ben Yosef, the Messiah descending from Joseph. This is what is written here in Rabbi Monk's commentary. On reaching Egypt, Jacob ardently hopes to see this messianic union of the two children, Judah and Joseph, come about one day. So this reunion, or this reunion here in Goshen is all about these two concepts coming together. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you that you will rarely, if ever, hear about the concept of Messiah ben Yosef in those online forums that you read from Orthodox organizations that are trying to tell you that Yeshua is the Messiah because of X, Y, or Z. He didn't bring world peace. He didn't bring the tribes home. He didn't rebuild a third temple. But they will never tell you, you'll never read anything about Messiah ben Yosef. And yes, the Messiah is supposed to do all those things. However, that Messiah has to be preceded by Messiah ben Yosef. So right now, Jews will tell you, Orthodox Jews will tell you that we are awaiting the Messiah ben David. Okay. Well, what about Messiah ben Yosef? What shouldn't he has to come first? But you'll never hear this. And it's understandable. You know, Yaakov and I were having this conversation the other night at the Hanukkah gathering. He brought up a good point. He says it's understandable because, look, all they're trying to do is win an argument. And I get it. I get it. That's a human thing. You're just trying to win an argument. So you're not going to bring up points that would give your enemy ammunition to undermine your argument. I totally understand that. And that's intellectually dishonest. It's intellectually dishonest. I mean, I get it. But, you know, not mentioning Messiah ben Yosef is not doing you any favors. In fact, there was one sole rabbi in the story of Shabbatai Zvi. There was one sole rabbi who confronted Shabbatai Zvi and says, how can you be the Mashiach ben David when the Mashiach ben Yosef hasn't come yet? So here, Rabbi Monk is bringing down that Jacob longed to see these two messianic these two messianic concepts come together. Anyway, we wrap it up with this. On reaching Egypt, Jacob ardently hopes to see these two concepts come together. He sends Judah to meet Joseph so that these two, the ones who represent the 10 lost tribes and the two who remain faithful, might together pave the way for the coming of the Messiah, Moshiach, that is Goshen. You have to have both concepts. And finally, we conclude with this last insight. The author of this explanation, Rabbi Zivi Shapiro, continues in his Sefer B'nai Yissachar, the 4 letters of the word Goshen, the Gim, Shin, Nun, He, are the exact same letters that are found on the Hanukkah dreidel. So actually, the Nes Gadol Hayeh Sham that's on the dreidel, those 4 letters actually spell the word Goshen. Moreover, Hanukkah is celebrated about the same time that this Sidra of Vayigash is read, which is true, right? We just finished Hanukkah. The letters are the initials of the 4 words designating certain forces in man, and it was the corruption of these forces which brought about the suffering of the exile and the above mentioned 4 nations. With the intention of removing this corruption, the forces are those of the physical, goof, intellectual, sechel, the emotional, nefesh, the elements of the soul, plus the general forces which comprise the totality of hakol, of human aptitudes. In other words, when we come to Hanukkah, we experience a Goshen whereby through rededicating ourselves to God and acknowledging that He's the one who is our salvation, we rectify our goof, our sechel, our nefesh, and our hakol. We rectify those 4 elements of the man which brought us into exile in the first place. End of our Aliyah today. Thank you so much for being part of the program and joining us all week. Remember, next week, we and myself and I, let me rephrase, the Rebbe and I, there you go, will be out of town. We will not be here. And the Aliyah will be handled by guest hosts, the Zakins and our Hazan. So I wish all of you the very best. May you have a great Shabbat. We'll look forward to, I will be here. We will be here for Shabbat. And after that, we will be whisked away. And Bezrat Hashem returning for the book of Shemot. So thank you so much for being a part of the program. Please be sure and subscribe to our channel. Give to our digital campaign. I forgot to mention that. That'd be fantastic. And we will see you mañana. Shabbat Shalom to all of you. Have a great and amazing day.